Good morning. I had Pam change her budget presentation. Did you hear about that? Okay, good. Okay, good. Chairman, did you hear? Commissioner Peck's on.
That looks better. Pull it up on my phone and
How many vouchers we got? Just two?
just
One. Okay. Thought I seen two, but I guess I was looking at last week's.
Doesn't show up on the picture. It's like
Good morning. It is Tuesday, November 22nd. We're here for the Commissioners Board meeting. We have two commissioners in-house. We have one on the phone remote. We have our administrator, the clerk at the board. At this time, I'll call the meeting to order and ask you to please rise and join in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we get started on any agenda items, I'd like to note that we are adding two executive sessions at the end of the meeting. And at this time, I'll ask for the approval of the November 1st meeting minutes be approved.
approved, no changes.
Okay, so awarded. And the approval of the vouchers.
I move for approval of fund expenditures in the total amount of $320,463.20 as presented, and note that it has been reviewed and signed by two representatives of the auditor's office and the county administrator.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Next, we'll move down to the approval of the consent agenda. There are 4 items on the consent agenda.
Move for approval of consent agenda items 1 through 4 as presented.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second for the 4 consent items. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Next, we'll move down to public comment. Is there anybody on the phone or anybody in the room that would like to give public comment?
There's nobody on the phone.
This might take me 2 public comment sessions. So I want to bring to your attention a newspaper article that came out. Full of surprises. Just protect your article sitting here and where your chair is, just so you know. It's an enlightening article. I'm going to make a request that each of you spend the time to read it so you can understand decisions that are being made on a bi-county recovery center that we're supposed to be in partnership with. The partnership apparently is a one-sided partnership where the commissioners are just announcing in recovery meetings to the public, to everybody else, how things are going to be. Pay attention to the wording and the decisions that have been made, because it's wrong and it's not right. And we established a recovery center board so that the community could have input on how this center was going to unfold. To me, it just reads like another malicious act by the Benton County Commissioners to do things the way they want to do it versus the way the community wants it done. So I encourage you, at the last meeting, a comment was made by Dr. Michelle Gerber that said to me, when I asked, well, who made the decision that we were going to have a mental health facility in a grape warehouse? And I summarily was dressed down by Matt Rasmussen and Ms. Gerber that said, well, you had people from Franklin County that were there and made the decisions of how that's going to, who was going, how they were going to pick this place. It wasn't done through the Recovery Center Board. It was just done by some unknown group that walked there and decided that's where we're going to put a mental health facility. Okay? I want to know who was there and made that decision on behalf of the Franklin County residents and citizens of this county and myself, because I certainly wasn't there. I want to know. It floats back to commissioners that need to answer how that's going to be, and I am tired of being told by commissioners from Benton County how things are going to be and getting this answer. Well, your commissioners, they're the ones that agreed that we would go out and do that. I never heard of that before the other day when this comment was made. And I certainly had no input on about 90% of this article that says how the recovery center is going to be ran, locations, all those type of things. And I would suggest before you give one penny of money to this process, that we sit and have a discussion as a county. Is this the way we want to go if this is the way it's going to be? Okay? Because maybe it's time to seriously sit down and look and see, is it time for Franklin County to lead themselves in the future and quit answering to another county just because they're bigger or they perceive they're bigger and have more power? So I'll stop. I bet my 3 minutes is coming close, and if I get really riled up, I'll come back up to the next session.
Thank you, Sheriff. Is there anybody else for public comment? Nobody on the phone?
No.
Okay, and I don't see nobody moving forward, so we'll move down to the next item on the agenda, which is the public hearing for the Franklin County Horticultural Pest Board budget for year 2023, and at this time, I'll open the public hearing. Pam?
Are we on? Okay, here we go. Okay. Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
What is... So I'm powering up my presentation, and this is to provide commissioners and the community with our year-end summary and our 2023 budget going forward. And so I don't know, I just kind of present things as nobody really knows what we do. So I always like to provide a little bit of background. And this is kind of our mission statement. We are under the authority of the Revised Code of Washington, the 1509. And what we do is we investigate complaints received on unmanaged, neglected, or abandoned vegetation that may harbor threatening pests and diseases. And complaints consist of backyard fruit trees, as well as large as the commercial orchards. And our season is primarily through April through like late October. And some of the things that we accomplished this year are things that were that happened that were interesting. And I think a lot of people might already be aware of the Japanese beetle, and that was the cause of the quarantine in the Grandview area. And so since then, additional traps have been placed along our border between Benton County and Franklin County. And as well, we have a new, Wazoo put out a grant for a cost share tree removal of Western X and Little Cherry, and that still is available to this day. And other things, that we have our presence at the fair. And we did the Bureau Farm Fair, which accommodated 225 fifth graders, so that was fun to be around the little kids and talk about bugs and their fruit trees. And then what we did is, if you see here, we removed 55 trees this year, and we still have 56 open tickets, which they roll over and we continue to monitor. So that just means people reached out to us and with an interest to remove a fruit tree, or in our scouting of residential areas, we discovered, fruit trees that were infested. So those we continue to monitor. And then so we do have the one thing that we did new this year is we put an insert in the tax statements, and that was very well received. And I was out I want to say early spring and validated 67 trees for removal. And so we will be doing that again this year. And we do offer special rates for tree removal periodically throughout the season. So the other...
On a question on that, you said rates for removal, so the people that own those trees are paying for the removal?
Yes. At a discounted rate compared, because what we discovered is, like I said, I went out and validated 67 trees, and then just went crickets. And so I think part of the reason, when people start looking into the cost of tree removal, I think they decide they can live with the tree a little bit more and just continue to clean up the mess. So we offer, like we did this year, we offered $50 for during a special time for removal. And of course, there is restrictions. We don't haul it away. We don't grind the stump. We do treat it to kill the stump. And then there is a sign. We're not going to take down a tree that's 30 feet high. It's just that's out of our expertise there. So there are restrictions. And so we think we did have some takers. Plus, we also have a rate where we accommodate veterans and disabled people. And we don't charge for those tree removal. Mind you, this is residential. This isn't a commercial orchard or a big 5-acre hobby farm we're talking about here. So then the other thing that we had a goal last year was to start a website. So we wanted to create a website, and Wazoo has some information of our services on their website, but we wanted to create our own where people could go and get additional information when we direct them. And we will link back to what they have. And so earlier when I was talking about investigations of, primarily residential commercial orchards, we had three cases that we opened this year, and we were able to close one without having to do any legal follow-up. So that's what we try to do. We try to get people, we want to resolve things before they escalate to the legal level. Right. Any questions so far? Okay, so continuing on, one of the services that we do provide is the cherry leaf roll virus. And this is a virus that will reduce your fruit. So that means the size and the flavor will be reduced. And eventually it will kill the tree. And so so what you see to the right there is our map of our scout map. And so all of those, like the green are apple orchards and the red are cherry. And our focus is on the cherry, the red ones, for the cherry leaf roll virus. And those are all trees or orchards that have cherry trees that are 10 years or older, because that's when the viruses tend to really start to appear. And so we had over 1,300 acres surveyed compared to like the 14 last year. And so the two indicators of cherry leaf roll virus, so I have these images here because this applies to even, your backyard fruit tree. And those leaves there, what you see is, so the one on the far right is a healthy leaf. And then you see the one in the middle, see the vein in that is like a light color. So that's one of the indicators, as well as see like the little, the leaves on the far left as well. And the really big indicator is the image below. Those are innations, those little green raised, like darker colors. Those are very distinct indicators of cherry leaf roll virus. And my inspector, that when he see those two, that's what he will definitely mark that tree for removal.
Before you move on,
Yeah.
I noticed that there's two rather large squares that are the same color or east of 395. That's not a cherry orchard, is it?
Yeah, it is, but it's just it's a little skewed.
You're seeing where I'm talking about over there, East 395?
Yeah, the two big.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's just the map. Because see, if you look down below along the Pasco Calotis Highway,
Yeah?
yeah, so it's not to scale.
Okay.
Yeah.
As I say, that's a massive orchard, if that's
Yeah.
all orchard. That's news to me. I didn't know they were out there.
Talk to our GIS guy. All right. So getting into more information, we are fueled by a special assessment fee. And we have one full-time coordinator and then 3 part-time inspectors, but we have found that we are sufficient with 2. And then our board always likes to have an intern, but with COVID, I mean, last year it was, I think a lot of people found staffing very challenging, let alone to find an intern. So, and I just want to show, it's like when you look, this is an actual snapshot of your tax statement. And so that's kind of where you see where we are. Give you an idea. Okay, so this is additional, like our revenues and expenditures, kind of getting into it. And the highlighted areas, and so to the left, what I'm looking at, this is our comparison of previous years in currently. So all the yellow highlighted are ones that we cannot adjust. Those are pretty much set fees. And so one of the things that we had talked about before is we had a very declining fund balance. And to the point where, we were down to, 1,300 hours, and we really need to be at 1,800 to be effective. And so some of the other changes that, you'll see in the comparison of the budget from like 2022 to 2023 is that we had some transition of coordinators at that time, and as well with the Health Care Act. Before, staff was primarily consisting of retired individuals, and now we have benefited individuals. So it's always been in the budget. We just haven't been able to fund it. And so that's what we were able to make those improvements going into 2023 with our assessment. So we want to keep those extra positions in our budget just because we never, for the unknown, even though we may not necessarily hire a person, it's like we want to just keep it in there. And as well with it's nice to have the benefited employees. It's just a good practice and good retention. Any questions?
Pam, this is Commissioner Peck. I don't know how well you can hear, but are there any changes to the budget before us today since the last time you were in to meet with us and we went through your budget?
We really didn't go through the budget at the assessment hearing, Commissioner Peck. But to answer your question, if you looking at our 2023, we have introduced some new items due to that assessment increase that we weren't able to before. And I marked them as new, so that's like the extra help, / intern. And we are able to increase our public outreach and education, and we did talk about that. That's one of the things that we do have a strong interest in going forward into next year. And additional mailings and training and education, which we didn't have previously.
So I'm looking at our read-ahead materials for this week. Could you point out to me, help me out here, show me where it references things that are new?
Okay, well, so the extra help, the intern, in the 2023.
Okay, we discussed that before.
Yeah. Well, so I mentioned the special mailing that mailers that we usually try to do at least 2 a year, and now we'll be able to do 4 or more.
Yeah, we talked about the increased outreach. Thank you.
And then we bolstered our office and operating supplies. We bolstered the small tools and minor equipment. A lot of our equipment is outdated or doesn't really meet safety regulation, so we are making those improvements. And I'm looking here. Repair and maintenance, there's really no change there. We did up the tree replacement program. We were at 8,000, and now we increased it to 10,000, and that consists of our tree buyback program, which we talk about is for tree.
Sure. Did you increase that since the last time you were in to visit with us?
Yes.
Okay. All right, anything else?
No, it's pretty straightforward.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So moving forward.
I have a question on the medical and dental, where it has more than doubled. What? On the medical and dental, I see that it is more than doubled from last year.
Yes, it has. Well, we had a large increase, but then also, I think just overall, with the county, we had the cost increased, but as well, remember we didn't have benefited people before they were retired, and now we have, benefited. So that might be the big jump you see there.
All
and right. I don't set that.
Yeah. All right, thank you.
Does that answer your question?
Kind of. I mean, I know the insurance rates and everything went up. I've not seen any that have actually doubled, but yeah, thank you.
So Pam, I have a question. You mentioned that you have the potential for 3 employees, but you were only going to hire 2, correct?
Yeah, 2 additional inspectors. So right now, there's just 2 of us.
But it doesn't add up to the maximum that you could hire, correct? I'm a little confused here on your employment. Can you go back to that screen? Could you, there you go. 1 coordinator, 3 inspectors, but didn't you say you were only going to hire 2
Yes.
and 1 intern? So the figures here on the meddling may not reach that amount without another employee, correct?
Correct.
Okay. All right, that was my question.
Yeah, I mean, just because it's there doesn't mean we feel we need to spend it.
Thank you.
So looking ahead, and we had this conversation a little bit with our previous hearings, what we really want to get into is more public education and outreach. And these are some of the areas, like we've already started opening dialogue to have conversations with in presentation. And these are, a lot of these right here, the Tree Fruit Association, the Cherry Institute, and Columbia Basin Tree Fruit Club, they primarily are growers. And then we want to have more presentations at the workshops, and even to include pesticide credits, where we know a lot of people, even residents with backyard fruit trees, like to have, they have pesticide licenses. And then one of the things that we started working on this year was, and I kind of define it as boots on the ground, and those are like realtors, those are property managers, commercial property managers, nurseries, and then the municipality and code enforcement and public works. They are out there and they see a lot more than we can. So we like to partner and help each other out. So these are things that we'll just continue to monitor and work on. And that's always the codling moth and apple maggot traps in residential areas. And again, putting a strong focus on property owners that are within 1.5 miles of a commercial grower or property. Because, even though you've got, you have a field, all the weeds in your field, for example, could be contaminating somebody's, field that is actually their livelihood next door to you. And I really like this image right here, because I really think it paints a perfect picture of what we deal with, and for just awareness for the public. So just as a reminder to everybody, if you see something, say something. Please report pest infestation and disease when you see it. And here on the far left, that is an apple tree that is strongly and heavily infested with codling moth. And there, on the middle upper image, that is Japanese beetle, which I said we've been learning about. Below is a diseased tree. That's the tree that actually has cherry leaf roll virus. You can see the decline in the limb. It just looks sick, so there's something wrong. Don't hesitate to contact us. The upper right-hand corner, those are grapes, and those are grape mealybugs. And below, I wanted to show the difference. That's little cherry. So you see the difference in the size of the cherries. So eventually, that's what when I say fruit decline, that's what I'm referring to. All right. So things that we really want to be proactive about going forward is going back to our quarantine with Grandview. This is the Japanese beetle, and I wanted to show what their life cycle is. And here you see the size of it. It's about, compared to a penny. And they spend a lot of their time down in the ground. But when they come up, it's around June, and we did get some calls because there are some like look-alike insects, June bugs. It's about the same size, but it's all brown. It doesn't have, in the Japanese beetle, what you can't see, it has like a very green color. It's actually not, it's a very attractive color, but it's a bad bug. We don't want them. And the other one, this is one that's coming up. And the spotted lanternfly is a year-round battle, whereas the Japanese beetle spends a good amount of time in the ground, like I mentioned before. And we have a board member who is on a task force for spotted lanternfly. It's really large, heavily infested back east. And these are a list of some of the product that, or produce, I should say, that they are attracted to. They're not picky eaters. And they are like a sucking insect. So what they do is they get into the tree, the leaves, and they will decline, eventually just kill what they have. And tree of heaven is their #1 host tree preference. And that below, you could see, I wanted people to see what size it is compared, the guy holding it, and see how colorful it is. That's with its wings open. And then the map tells you like right now where it is. And if you look over there in Washington State, there you can see what we're potentially looking at. And it's been predicted that spotted lanternfly is going to be here by 2030, if it's not already. Some people think that these insects are here, we just don't know it yet. But so if you ever go down the Dalles, like toward Portland, notice all the tree of heaven, all the groves that are along there, along the road, the highway. And you'll see what challenge we'll have. So I wanted to also give you some more information on the spotted lanternfly. And I'm going to try to play a video, so fingers crossed here.
If you're a homeowner in Washington
So why isn't
and you're
it
still
showing?
paying for electricity, then I've got some big news for you. Just weeks ago,
This is what it looked like when the spotted lanternfly is taken over. Hundreds of thousands of them sucking the sap out of trees and vines, spraying their excrement everywhere, which then grows mold, destroying trees, crops, and property. The flies were first discovered almost 5 years ago in Berks County, Pennsylvania, and have grown outwards at a rate of 10 miles a year. They have the potential to destroy the Keystone State's wine, craft beer, wood, and apple products, industries that tally up to $18 billion. The Department of Agriculture is calling the spotted lanternfly the worst invasive species the U.S. has seen in the last 150 years. And experts say that's not an exaggeration. The spotted lanternfly is thought to have arrived on a shipment of landscaping stone from Asia in 2014. Native to China, India, and Vietnam, the invasive spotted lanternfly hatch in the spring. The Department of Agriculture is trying to get ahead of that.
My name is Albert Chicaro, and I am the FIPA 2, Forest Insect Pest Aid 2 at the Boyertown Spotted Lanternfly Office.
It's Albert and his colleagues' job to destroy spotted lantern eggs before they hatch.
Here you see the lanternfly egg mass, and here I'm using my hunting knife to scrape these eggs into this alcohol. These eggs are viable. Each time one scrapes an egg mass like this, one is destroying 30, 40, 50 spotted lanternflies, which of course will each be 30, 40, 50 more next year.
Experts and government officials are baffled by the staggering numbers of lanternflies that are killing crops and destroying businesses in central and southeastern Pennsylvania.
I just saw a bug, it freaked me out. It's a butterfly.
This is Shannon Powers, press secretary of the Pennsylvania Department of Agriculture. Her uneasiness around flying bugs is understandable.
They cover everything. They are a menace. There are so many of them, they're thick and you can't count them.
Oh, it's almost impossible for me to describe the tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of insects swarming over an area at once.
The sheer amount of them that you see on trees is bad enough, but we haven't gotten to the worst part. Honeydew. That's the name given to the spotted lanternfly's excrement, and there's a lot of it. That's because they are inefficient metabolizers and need to take in a lot of sap and pass along a high percentage of that to get the nutrients they require. It's so much, people near an infested tree describe it as rain.
Sometimes when one is under a tree that's being fed on heavily by lanternflies, it actually will occlude your vision. The honeydew, the exudate from the bug can be so dense that it appears as a rain-like vision in front of your eyes, such that it actually obscures your ability to see.
The honeydew and mold can cover plants, rendering their fruit disgusting, but also can kill the plants by blocking their ability to photosynthesize. If overrun, growers could lose their entire harvest, as well as future harvests in just one season. And the problem is that the spotted lanternfly has no natural predators here. Nothing seems to be eating them, not even chickens.
There have been a couple studies where chickens have been fed, chickens will eat anything,
Right.
and chickens won't eat them.
There's some talk and research going into potentially bringing in their natural predators, but that may not solve the problem while creating new ones in the process.
Someone asked, why don't you just bring in a horde of praying mantises and unleash it on them? You have to be careful as you're trying to control an insect that you don't wipe out other beneficial insects, that you don't destroy plants, that you don't, for example, jeopardize your pets or your children.
So what is being done?
Just last year, we spent more than $20 million on research to find out how this insect is going to behave, what might work to control it, on actually getting out and removing the ailanthus trees that it feeds on, the tree of heaven, and treating areas.
On top of that, there's a quarantine for businesses in the counties where the lanternfly is most prevalent. Business owners are required to obtain a permit instructing them what needs to be done before shipping goods out of these counties. The fear is that if the growth of the lanternfly isn't curbed, these businesses could see an embargo. That would be financially devastating.
The spotted lanternfly directly threatens $18 billion of popular things like tree fruits like apple and peach and wine, hops, and hardwoods. And they're all tremendously important to our economy in Pennsylvania.
And residents have to do their part too. Lanternflies can lay their eggs pretty much anywhere. So look on decks, lawnmowers, your car, all over. If it's still spring, you can eliminate the eggs before they hatch. The lanternfly is also invasive in South Korea, and going mostly unchecked, they spread across the whole country in just 2 years. Right now, there have been sightings of the lanternfly in New York, New Jersey, Delaware, and Virginia, but no established populations have been reported. Let's hope Pennsylvania is able to contain these bugs before they destroy the plant and tree population of this entire region.
So, no joke, right? And they said it's just a matter of time. And as the assessor replied at the last hearing, if a quarantine occurred and caused the crops to lose value, it would likely and most likely affect the selling price of properties. So I wanted to show that because I want people to start, being proactive and looking for these things. Same with the Japanese beetle. More so, Japanese beetle is like it's in our neighborhood. Give us a call because we'll be distributing Japanese beetle traps as well and providing information and education right along with Wazoo Extension and the WSDA. All right, well, so that ends my presentation.
Questions? I have a couple. The cherry leaf roll.
Yeah.
is it just applies to cherry trees, or does it apply to other ornamental trees and stuff? Because we had a tree in our yard that the leaves were rolling really hard on it, and I was wondering, can it exist on other trees?
That may not be cherry leaf roll virus. That might just be a different virus that's
Okay.
causing your leaves to curl like that.
Yeah, the tree's gone. We took it out,
Oh,
but I'm just curious. Does the cherry leaf roll only exist in cherry trees?
Yes.
Okay. The other thing I would suggest is one of the best ways to get into a parent's ear is through their kids. And you mentioned you went to schools. I think that would be one of your best outreach places, is to actually hand out material to the kids to take home to their parents.
I agree.
I think that's one of the best ways to get in touch with parents.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Any other questions? Anybody from the public would like to comment? Nobody on the phone?
Not weird, no.
Okay, so if no comment at this time, then I'll close the public hearing and entertain a motion for the budget.
Move for approval of Resolution 2022-306 as presented.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second for Resolution 2022-306. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Aye. That moves us down to the Franklin County budget. And at this time, we're going to have a public hearing on the Franklin County budget. And at this time, I'll open the public hearing. Good morning.
Morning. Commissioners, I just want to start off by acknowledging,
You might want to move the mic down, Mr. Davidson. There you go.
I just want to start off by acknowledging this man right here who's been really stepped it up, because I'm kind of new here and was not sure of the budget process and a little limited time to dive right into it. We have worked side by side, and I really do appreciate all the hard work that Tim has put into this, which I know is a little bit above probably what he's been called on in the past to do, and I really appreciate it. And in fashion I've seen done at other commissioner meetings, when you have a joint team, the administrator steps down and does a presentation, and it's my honor to do that with Tim today. So want to just give you, this is just a hearing. We're not approving the budget, of course, today. So basically, to get this to where you can make your considerations, it requires us to have developed a preliminary budget to present to you, which doesn't mean that we necessarily have any ownership in these numbers. This is just what we thought that probably had the best chance of appeasing most of you, based upon the comments that we've got back from you, what we heard in budget hearings and things. It's there's some big amounts here that are going to require your deliberation, and I think with should we just go over how do you want to do this, Tim? Do you want me to just hit the big ones and then we can dive into it, or do you want to tackle these?
I think that'd be good.
Okay, so basically, I'm just going to hit the ones that I think will be of interest to you and to the public. That's the largest. First of all, there's the 1%. Which is always, an option. The 1% we did not have in our preliminary budget that we offered to you. So we skipped down. Next line item is a road shift. This one I personally have a little bit of issue with, because I've not used to seeing road shifts to the amount that we've had in prior years here. The road budget is an important budget also, but it has been higher than this amount, but this is a high amount that we offered of an increase to $900,000. We actually initially had it for higher than that, but we got it lowered to $900,000. No use of bank capacity is also on the preliminary budget offered to you. We went out and we've worked with the department heads through all of the process, and we'll continue to do so as we go from here. But we went through the revenues and worked with some various offices, mainly the treasurer's office, to drive some new revenue figures which help the budget a little bit, which I think are entirely realistic, and numbers that we can basically live with. All this in the sense of we wanted to protect the ability of the county to offer a COLA, which wouldn't be proper for me to comment on because we're bargaining on that with the labor unions, but we do have some capacity to do that. So those are the big highlight items that we have in this preliminary budget to you. Do you want to add anything, Tim?
No, I think you hit all the key points.
So that's where we are, and now it's up for to hear any public comments on this, and then of course for you to deliberate. We've got a little bit of time before we have to actually adopt the budget, but we need to still to work on this issue and stay diligently on it so that we can get it done in time. I can tell you that we have met with some department heads and identified some key items that we think that really, because the capital budget was, not nearly all of it was, it was maybe a third of the request were approved. And so knowing that you're cutting into, a budget that far, proposed budget, you got to make sure that there's something in there. They're all needed, or they wouldn't put them in the budget, but you really got to get it identified down to what's really truly a dire need, and I think we did a pretty good job of identifying some of those. I did skip over, and I want to go back up to the revenues because it's very important. The ARPA funds, we show an increase in the ARPA. There's 550 that was in last year's budget, approved last year's budget, that's actually being brought forward, and then we went to an additional 350, which is about all, in my opinion, that we can go, because those ARPA funds have been, some of those have been, we made representation to some other districts out there that these funds would be available to them too. And so this increased amount here is going to us to take the pencil to the sharpener and sharpen it a little bit more in regards to some of those. So I hope that we don't have to go any more additional to those ARPA funds. But we did include it 350, and the amounts that Tim and I identified that we think is crucial for the county that we are paying with that 350 are two amounts that came out of the sheriff's office that I think is we heard in budget presentations, and I think that they're pretty important. And one is that body scanning unit, and the other is for the cameras that provide more clear pictures and better tracking, and not the granulated pictures that we have in the current system. So I think that those are two things that, from a safety standpoint for our custody personnel here and for the sheriff's request, are pretty important, and I think it's warranted using the ARPA funds for that myself. So let's stand at that.
And there are, as Dwayne mentioned, as far as capital, there's $541,500 of capital expenditures that were added into this budget. There was approximately, just eyeballing it, probably $200,000 that were not included from the original request, but $541,000 of capital. The primary requests that were added in were just your general non-capital, non-personnel, and that was right around $1.8 million that was added in from those requests.
Okay, so I guess we'll open it up to the commissioners for questions first, and then we'll take comment from the public. Any commissioners got questions?
Hey, Dwayne, this is Commissioner Peck. The 550 in ARPA funds that were prior year approved last year, those funds are sequestered somewhere in an ARPA account, correct?
They are in the budget.
The ARPA funds it's a separate fund in the county. It's not within current expense currently, but there's a scheduled $550,000 transfer from the ARPA fund to current expense for
in the present year budget.
in the 2022 budget. And then there's in the budget being presented today for 2023, there's another $350,000 that's slotted for.
That's fine. I'm aware of the 550 and the 350. What I wanted to make sure was that the 550 was, because it was approved in a previous year, that in fact it was still sequestered in the ARPA account and hadn't been used for something else or double counted as a carryover or something of that nature where it wouldn't be available. So it sounds like you've got it identified. I wanted to note that you've got in here, nobody has entered the 1%. Without necessarily taking a position for or against the 1%, I'll remind folks that when you're looking at county property taxes, if you look at it, I don't know, let's use a pizza as an example. The slice of that pizza that is the current expense property tax that comes to the county, that's a very small slice of that total pie. It's actually about 12%. So to put it in perspective, if someone has a property and let's say their annual taxes are $4,000, which is a fairly nice property. I know a lot of people have higher tax bills than that. Many people have lower bills, but just as an example, on that property with a $4,000 annual tax bill, it works out to something around $475 per year. So the question would be $475 for a year on a $4,000 tax bill would yield about $107,000 to the county, which could be used, in theory, to reduce the $900,000 road shift. I think all the commissioners at one time or another have expressed our desire to continue to improve our roads as much as possible, and so not, again, advocating for or against the 1%, but trying to put some context to it, that we could reduce the 900,000 road shift by 107,000, and the cost would be $4.75 roughly for a property in the city of Pasco, let's say, with a $4,000 a year tax bill. So thought that might help put it in perspective, not only for the board, but for the public as to what that 1% really amounts to. It's not a 1% increase in the rate. It's $1 for every $100 that we collected last year. So it's a pretty minor increase.
So, Commissioner Peck, this is Commissioner Mullen. I just don't know if I heard you correctly, but on that $4,000 average tax bill, do you say it's $4.75 or $475?
It's $4.77 as calculated about a year ago. It might be a little more, it might be a little less now, depending on things. But I would say it's safe to say that it's under $5 for the entire year. When people get their county tax bill, I have observed that they don't typically have the information or haven't broken it out to see where all these taxes go. But of a property tax bill in the county, roughly 12% is all that comes to the county. And so if we were to take the 1%, it's not a rate increase, it's just 1% more money than we collected last year. Yes, that works out to under $5 for the entire year. If you want to look to see where the majority of those property taxes go, it's state schools get 18.5%, Part 2 to state schools another 10%, and then local school taxes are another 37%. So all those together are 65-70%. So the county's piece is the only piece that the 1% would apply to, and it's pretty de minimis over a year. Again, that's less than $5 for the entire year on a $4,000 tax bill.
And how long has it been since we've taken the 1%?
I don't know who that question is directed to,
Oh,
but
I'm sorry, Commissioner Peck.
we have some bank capacity. Those are the portions of taxable authority that we haven't used in the past, and if we don't take the 1% this year, that would increase our bank capacity. But that's probably a better question for Tim or Dwayne.
Yeah, I'm not exactly, I'd have to research that. I'm not exactly sure when the last time we took the 1%. Are you, Tim?
I've got on the sheet in front of me, in 2021, it shows 1% / bank capacity. I don't think that the 1% was taken that year. So I think there was approximately 99,000 of banked capacity taken in 2021. And then once again, it shows the same similar amount in 2020. But once again, it's not specific as to whether it's the actual 1% or if it's banked capacity from previous years. So I'm not entirely positive right offhand.
Well, I am not for raising taxes at all, but we cannot continue to take away from our road department and sacrifice our roads and infrastructure.
So, Tim, maybe you can address a question from me here. Our emergency fund, in the last 2 years, where was it at, and where has it gone to?
Well, prior to last year, it would have been probably 1.4, 1.5 million. It's at just over 2 million now. I will say that there are, and Dwayne may have hit on this previously, but there are the options of the 1% as well as, from my understanding, there's 449,577 of available banked capacity as well. That could be used to offset any road shifts.
I should add something that I omitted before that's kind of important, but it may not occur. And so please bear that in mind because it's kind of a late development. But there's a thing called an administrative refund levy that can be done in Washington State. And what that basically is, just to make it really simple, is when people get senior exemptions or there's some type of Board of Equalization adjustment on their property, the county, or any taxing jurisdiction for that matter, can recoup the amount that they lost in the senior exemption. If it was properly done, they can recoup it in a future levy, a property tax levy called an administrative refund levy. It's not subject to the 1%. It can be in addition to the 1%. For some reason, Franklin County's never done one. And we just discovered that because, I hate to compare it to counties, but we always did one in Benton County and several other counties do it. It's a way that you recoup money that you had planned to collect that's been granted an exemption for because of mainly the senior exemptions. To compile that all together at this late notice in the budget cycle and do this year might be a tall tale for the Treasurer's Office because they don't have experience in doing this, quite frankly, just because they have not been called on to do it in the past. You'd want to make sure you did it correctly. But they are working with other counties that have done administrative refund levies that have the software system that they have. And if that would show as an additional amount. It could be another amount that we could use for budgetary purposes. But at this time, I want to be very cautious. I just want to let you know, because in case you hear something about it, that is being discussed and it's in the works. But I think there's only a slight chance that that gets in this budget cycle when we do it in our next budget cycle. So, you know, because we don't want to do it haphazard and want to do it correctly.
So Dwayne, this is Commissioner Peck. What is the carry forward or the life on administrative refund levies? Are they year for year, or would a refund levy allow you to go back 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, or is it just current year?
I've never had experience of it going back more than 3 years. I think it is unlimited, but I bet, John, could you? Our assessor is saying 3 years, and I would trust his judgment on it more. We've never accumulated that much before in my experiences, so I wouldn't know. I'd have to research that. But it sounds like John thinks it's 3.
And an administrative refund levy, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but it takes the tax savings from senior exemptions that you mentioned and other tax discounts, and it reapportions those back out across all taxpayers. Is that a fair way to put it?
That's a very fair way of putting it. You're basically taking the exemptions that people were granted that some people didn't pay, and you're redistributing to those that are paying.
And would that include the amounts that are relieved or waived under open space and current use programs?
Those are Board of Equalizations. I would think yes. I have to check into the. I know that all Board of Equalization actions, generally speaking, are.
Okay, so it's potentially a very large number when you add in current use tax reductions.
John, Commissioner Peck, I think some of these questions should be actually directed to our assessor, and I thought he was coming up here, but.
Commissioner, if I can clarify, were you referring to the difference between market value and assessed value when it comes to the current use property and that being shifted over? Is that what you were referring to?
Generally speaking, yes. When there's a current use property, rather than being taxed at its highest and best use, which I think you just referred to as market, and its actual, that delta between the two, which, as we've observed on open space or current use properties, can be 30, 40, 50%. So yes, that's what I'm referring to.
So those already shift over. However, this administrative refund is something different than that. This would only be for items to where the refund was given on say, a senior program, and money had to be given back to them, but yet the previous budget from that taxing entity had counted on that money and budgeted that money, then they could recoup that. So it would be different than the current use or highest and best use and current use program. It would be different than what that is.
Okay, all right, and I agree. That's already apportioned by the budget process. I just wanted to confirm it. So is it necessary for us to include in our budget the few senior exemptions or reductions as an example, since we've already gone down that road? Do we need to include those amounts in our current budget to make them eligible for an administrative refund levy in the future? I presume we do, because we don't necessarily know at budget time what senior exemptions might take place. Is that a fair way to put it?
It's on past senior exemptions, and so when we implement the levy, it's always on something that's happened in the past, so we don't have to do anything this budget cycle.
It would not be like having to reserve the 1% and you'd vote on that. That would not be required for this.
No.
Okay, I'm going to assume that our tax revenue projections, property tax, are predicated on assessed valuations and don't take into account senior exemptions, and therefore it's inherently in our budget that we're expecting to get the full value of those property taxes, and when we don't, by virtue of a senior exemption, then at least we've retained the right for a refund levy because the full amount was in the budget. That's my understanding. So thank you.
So this refund levy will be put back on the taxpayer to fund.
Right, and this is something that the board has to take action for. We just can't necessarily do it. It's, if we do it after we present the numbers, if we get, good ironclad numbers for you to consider, we can't do it without your approval, of course. But yes, they are.
All right, thank you.
Tim, do you have any idea what that figure could be?
I do not know. I was actually wondering if Dwayne knew as far as if we don't have the time to do it this year, does it have to, at that point, it has to wait until the next budget year?
Yes.
Well, looking over
Wayne,
the,
if I understood you, you said Benton County, in your experience, has gone back at least as much as 3 years, and there may not be any limit on the number of years you can go back. Not advocating that we do a refund levy or that we even go back multiple years, just trying to add to the understanding for everyone as to how the refund levy process works. And then separate comment, budget related, I'm not aware of any costs associated with running a county that have not gone up several percentage points, certainly more than 1%. We all know what inflation is doing. So even if we take the 1%, we're probably still, depending on your math, anywhere from 5 to 10% below what our costs are going up. I bring that up because as much as no one wants to raise taxes, if you don't keep some increase going with your revenues to go along with increased costs, the inevitable result is you only really have one choice, and that is to go after the road fund. And I just don't think that's good policy or good practice, especially in rural counties where we have lion's share of the cost responsibility and a whole lot of roads per capita, a lot of miles per capita. Thanks.
So I'd just like to say I want to thank you guys. I think you've done a wonderful job here on this budget. I appreciate the fact that you didn't raise the taxes the 1%, and we didn't have no bank capacity coming forward. The only problem I have is the road shift, raising it to 900, and that's why I brought up the emergency fund, is because the 2 years ago, I believe we were down to 700,000 in the emergency fund, and today we're over 2 million. I think we could balance this budget by taking 300,000 out of that emergency fund for the time being and lower our road shift down to 500,000. So we're moving in the right direction because, as Commissioner Peck said, our constituents up north are depending on these roads for getting their products out to market. And I'm going to take Mr. Davidson for a run one of these days, and I'm going to drive a couple of the roads that need severe attention. And I told him to make sure he buckles his seatbelt because they are a roller coaster, to say the least. But I think that would be an avenue to get us through this budget cycle, and I'm looking forward to working with Mr. Davidson because I think we got some good things on the future. My suggestion.
So if I understood what my fellow commissioner just said, that we would take 300 from the emergency fund, and I'm looking at an adopted amount of 900, so I think that would take the road shift down to 600,000, not 500. And Mr. Davidson, we have a county reserve policy that, if I recall, calls for no less than 7%. Does that fit with your understanding? And can you tell me about what percentage we're at in our reserves?
Do you know, Tim, right offhand?
That number is correct. And Based on the budget being brought before the board today, we would need approximately $3,300,000 in the reserve fund to meet 7%.
Okay, I appreciate that, and I want to acknowledge that the reserve fund has been used for a lot of things over the years, and as much as I value our commitment to good roads and spending on it, I'm quite aware that this road shift issue is perpetual, persistent. Our rate of increase in revenues in county government continues to fall far below the cost of inflation, so this road shift issue is only going to get worse going forward. And our reserve fund, really we have held that for one-time emergency kind of events, not for a recurring budget problem like this. Much as I too don't like increasing taxes, when you're talking about a 1% being less than $5 a year on a $4,000 tax bill, that seems to me to be a more equitable and more responsible fiscal approach to reducing the road shift. And maybe it's a combination of 1% and taking some out of the reserves, but even now at $2 million, we're only probably at about 60-65% of what we're supposed to have in our reserves by policy. Thanks.
I'd just like to point out, as we're sitting here struggling over, a few $100,000, it brings to light why we were so adamant about taking the 1% away from Benton Franklin Transit, who has approximately, I believe, $40 million in reserves. And just want to bring that to light. I mean, as we're struggling to run the county, we have empty buses that are accumulating millions in reserves.
Okay.
Well, it's discussion, and it's now open to the public for anybody that would like to come forward, or if there's anybody on the phone. I'll wait for Mr. Davidson to get back to his position to check the phone, but is there anybody in the courthouse that would like to comment?
No calls.
No callers and nobody coming to the mic, so at this time, I will close the public hearing and move on to the next topic because we're not making a decision on that today. Next on the agenda is the step increases for Deputy Clerk, LPA Position 2, Resolution 2022-307. Thank you, Tim.
Thank you, Commissioners. Thank you, Dwayne.
Good job.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Mr. Killian.
Dwayne.
Hi.
So have you had a chance to read the read-aheads? Mm-hmm. And do you have any questions on the proposal that Sam and I have put together for you to increase step increases for, actually it's going to be only 10 deputy clerks because we have 2 open positions that we've been able to fill. So the total amount would be about $4,000 per employee, and we have sufficient funds in our salary line item for the end of this year, and we have a rollover of almost $50,000 in the 2023 budget that has not been expended because we've had these openings throughout the year.
So how many employees?
This would be for 10.
10.
Mm-hmm. And some of them are here. They're instead of the 12, it'd be 10.
All right, thank you.
Yes.
So it sounds like you got sufficient funds
Yes.
already in your budget to cover this.
Correct.
And next year.
And next year.
Okay. Commissioners, questions?
Yeah, I thought, Dwayne, I thought we were doing a salary study to look at positions and ensure that all of our employees were compensated appropriately for the grade and step of their positions. So that's the first question. And the second is, just because funds are in a budget is not a basis. If that were the case, you could simply pick a position and double the salary and say, well, we have the money in our budget. There's really a disconnect there. Having the cash is not the criteria. The criteria is whether or not a pay study elevates the compensation for those positions. I suspect it will, and since that process is already underway, seems to me that that's a better approach, and I suspect that the compensation study may bring you a better result than what's proposed here, but the study will tell.
Well, these aren't actually moving them up in grades. This is moving them up in their same grade, but moving them up steps within that same grade.
Yeah, and I understand that, and that's a way of increasing people's compensation for the same position and the same work, and that step processes are supposed to be based on longevity and experience. So to use the step system as an artifice to increase salaries is not appropriate, because what you're doing is you're advancing people to the final step more quickly, and then their pay doesn't go up from there. The more appropriate course, in my opinion, is to do the study and to grade these appropriately. If you do the step increases now, it's going to be more difficult to see any kind of grade increases should the study bring forward that that's the more appropriate path, and I suspect it's going to. So I said a long time ago when these one-offs started that this was not the right path, and we needed to study all the positions so that all of our employees get treated equitably. So I don't agree that just because the funds are available that justifies the expenditure, and I don't believe that using steps to try and elevate salaries without a grade study is not an appropriate path.
So just for clarification, because Commissioner Peck asked the question, the RFP for the wage study is actually our next agenda item.
It is, right. We'll be
And
talking
so
about that in a minute.
that is, and that will cover, when he talked about scope, and it actually is for all of the positions in the entire county.
Right.
If you want to elaborate. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll be talking about that at length in a minute, but I was just going to say he's had the departure of a number of employees this year, so it's kind of an exception. And all of the money that was saved by not filling those positions was more of the justification rather than comparing them to the one-offs that have happened, so.
Right, and I'll also add, Commissioner Peck, that we have
Dwayne,
interviewed.
could you ask people to speak into the microphones? I'm not able to hear this conversation.
Okay, will do, yeah. Is it on to?
Yeah, it's on.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
I can now, yeah.
Okay.
Can you hear Commissioner Peck? Can you hear Sam?
Can you hear me? Hello?
Yeah, I can if there's no other noise in the background, yes.
Okay, I'll try and speak up. I was just going to say he's had a number of departures this year, which is different than some of the other positions. So he had extra money in his account, which is what he's using to fill these two-step increases for 10 employees. And I figure that's going to be about, Tim could probably tell us exactly, but I figure that's going to be about $48,000 to $50,000 extra per year.
I heard all of that discussion.
Right.
And we've had departures from a lot of departments this year, like a third of our county workforce in the last year or so. So there's been a lot of departures. My interest and my focus is in making sure that positions are properly graded and people are fairly compensated, and that we provide attractive compensation. If we are simply going to say that there's money left over in the budget, either because we had a position that was vacant or whatever the reason is, to then use that money to pay step increases, you're advancing people to the end of the scale more quickly, and you're just basically kicking the can down the road. The correct approach is to grade these positions properly with the changes in the work that Mr. Killian has spoken to in the past. Get them graded properly and pay people fairly. And I think the result is, yes, it takes a little bit more time, but I suspect that the employees in the end up getting better compensation. And if you do step increases now, even when you add grades, you've advanced people to the end of the scale. And in the end, I think employees lose, frankly. I talked to a number of different counties at the County Leaders Conference last week. This is not unique to the clerk's office. It's not unique to our county. And with the inflation and competition for employees and changes in functions and responsibilities, I continue to believe that the fair and the smart budgeting approach is to grade these positions properly and compensate people fairly. And I think in the end, everybody will be happy with the outcome, even though it's not going to happen immediately. It can certainly be done on the front end of the study. You don't necessarily have to wait for the whole study to be done. You can do a portion of them up front if you think that there's a high priority need to do that. So yeah, it's not a function of, hey, we had a position vacant, so we've got money available. And I'll also remind Mr. Killian of a promise that he made to the Board of Commissioners in a board meeting about his LFO positions. And the board has been pretty supportive and cooperative of allowing those to be used for other things. And even though they haven't generated the LFO returns that were promised and were the basis for that approval. So it isn't that I and the boards previous haven't been very supportive. But on this one, I think the absolute right thing to do is to grade. If that's not the right solution, then it begs the question, why the heck are we doing a grade study at all? Thanks.
Well, I just want to add that we have had this grade study in process since January of this year, but with the turnover in the HR department, that never came to fruition. These staff need to be compensated now. We are losing people. We've had 12 applications in 2 months, and we've offered a position to one person. She declined because the salary was less. Another one, during the interview, she asked what the salary was, the hourly salary, and she declined at that point. We have no applications at this point for the 2 open positions. We've lost multiple people to other counties, state agencies, Hanford, which isn't included in our comp studies, but we're becoming a training ground for other counties, and I think it's the right thing to do to compensate these people for the hard work that they do. It's not a lot of money, and the comp study, I believe, will show that they should be graded 2 steps higher. I'm here today to ask for your support for these people that actually, in my mind, deserve this money.
And I'm merely suggesting that, 1, we agree that they deserve to be compensated better. 2, I believe the approach you're advocating for is short-term and does not fully compensate these employees, that a grade study, which takes a little longer, will grade and compensate them fairly, and they, the employees, will actually see a much better compensation after the grade study. Advancing them on the step scale now is just an artifice, and what we need to do is quit talking about a grade study, get it done, and if you want to start with your office and do that as the first piece of the grade study, I'm fine with that as well. But I think in the end, county retention is improved by a grade study, and your employees end up being better compensated by a grade study. So I think it's difficult. I know it's difficult, but if taking care of the employees and ensuring them fair and equitable compensation is the primary objective, then it's a grade study that does that, not a step increase. Thanks.
Sam, with the grade study coming forward, what is your recommendation?
Well, I think he has the money in the budget to advance them 2 steps. I'm not opposed to that at all. I do know that having written the RFP, I have put his positions at the front, so they're going to get analyzed
Dwayne?
first.
Yes. Still voice.
I'm going to respectfully ask the HR director not to advise the board on policy.
Okay.
She's advocating for a step increase. That's not her function. We're talking about a study here to look at these grades, and I would respectfully ask that the discussions about what's appropriate and what's not be left to the board. Thank you.
But to continue, I think that we've expedited the RFP as fast as, it's been a difficult one. It's a huge task, and it is on the agenda for, I don't advocate any additional wage studies if that was, I think we're moving this as fast as we can, so, and,
You have any more questions, Commissioner Mullen?
Not if I can't ask for, some guidance.
Well, and I worked with Sam, and so that's why she's up here.
yeah.
And that's the way it should be done. So let me ask you this, Mr. Killian, if this was to go through today and the wage study comes through and they're supposed to be higher yet, are you then going to ask for another increase because we've already given this one?
Well, if they should be graded out of 15, then they would be placed at that grade and step that was appropriate, like all the other ones that have been done throughout this year.
Exactly.
And I would
This
like
isn't
to,
just a one-off either.
right, and I would like to caution and say that when the wage study does come out, it's always an arbitrary thing, depending upon the finances of the county,
Right.
of how much that we actually honor. I mean, we can't necessarily promise that we're going to pay when the
Exactly.
wage study comes out, because actually that rarely happens. It's just
Well,
the
that's what happened
unfortunate.
last time.
This is the unfortunate thing that the county budget is, I think we just went through the budget and we see how much we're wrangling over the money. There's just
Right.
not the money there. So I just want to make sure that there's not a false perception about what the wage study may do. It will show you,
Dwayne, I think you could add to that the fact that we're going through this budget looking for dollars for a variety of things, and any funds that are in accounts at the end of the year go into the carry forward to next year. And so those dollars have frankly been accounted for. So understand that, having extra money in a department account is not free money. It's not extra money. And everything that gets redirected prior to this budget being approval only increases road shifts and other expenses. And to be clear, I'm not pitting road shifts against employees. Those are separate fund accounts. But I think that, as I've said a couple times, and I'll say it for the final time, if we're really interested in taking care of our employees, we find out what is the proper grade for these positions, which is a measure of the work that they're being asked to do. It's not a measure of the market. And then once you determine the scope and depth of the work that they're doing, then you look at market comparison and what other people are being paid for that level of responsibility. And I don't think there's any question that we're going to find out that we're going to be behind the market. But I don't have a big appetite for doing step increases now and then doing grade and step increases again in a few months when we get the initial information back on a study, assuming the study starts with the clerk's office, which it can. So,
Well, I just want to add one more thing. They've been waiting for over a year. Again, the funds are there. I understand Mr. Peck's position of, it's a rollover into 2023. But, with inflation and everything else going up and what's happened throughout this year with other departments getting bumped up in increases, I think it's the right thing to do. Our employees are our best asset.
All right. Is there any other comment? If there's no more comments, is there a motion?
Make the motion to approve Resolution 2022-307.
I'll second. There's been a motion and a second for Resolution 2022-307. Discussion.
I would ask if it's the board's opinion that we should do both step increases now and look at grade and step increases after this study both. Is that the plan? Is that the intent?
And that's what was
I
discussed.
ask because it speaks to my level of support for the motion.
That was what was discussed during this step increase for deputy clerk, LPA 2. That was in the discussion.
Well, the question was whether or not the board anticipates doing an additional grade and step increase if the study comes back and warrants it. I'm less inclined to support the motion if we're just going to do additional grade and step increases in a few months. But if we're going to bring people up to par with these step increases, then it's easier to support the motion. So I'm looking to find out if the board has thoughts on that point.
I refer to our HR director.
Well, these are your employees, so I mean, I can't comment on
Well,
that.
it would. I mean, they would be part of the comp study.
Yep.
I think the expectation would be that they would get their step increases right now, and yes, after the comp study, if it showed an increase, they would get that like everyone else.
And we had the money for it.
And we have the money. Yeah, thank you, Dwayne.
So I concur.
And how long would it take for the comp study to be done?
I have a whole presentation on that in a minute,
Yep.
but it's 6 months roughly.
Hearing no more discussion, there's been a motion and a second for Resolution 2022-307. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
I think it's appropriate to wait for the grade study, so I vote nay.
Motion carries.
Appreciate it, Commissioners.
Thank you. Next, we'll move on to the Commissioner Administrator updates. Mr. Davidson.
Budget preparation and compilation was the primary focus of my schedule last week. I had several meetings with Tim and department heads. I really appreciate all the hard work Tim has put in the budget process. Elected officials meeting was a great success, attended by elected officials, including representatives from the judge from the district and superior court. Several invited department heads were also in attendance. Several topics were covered, and it was agreed that future meetings should be held on a monthly basis. There was several elected officials that are in the room here that were in attendance, and I appreciate their involvement in it. I think, like I said, it was a good success. Yesterday, Shirley and I met with McKinstry and Simmons staff about the immediate urgent concern about some heaters that went out in the atrium at HAPO. We had a couple heating units go down in what was already a compromised number of functioning units. I think we determined the most cost-effective way to proceed to balancing the fact that the place needs heat to operate, but also that these units are going to be replaced as soon as next year. So I think we found a good cost-effective way to get them patched up and running just long enough to get through the winter. And that's my presentation. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Davidson. Commissioner Peck?
I only heard part of that. Sounds like we're under administration office business now.
Yes.
Yes.
No, we're under Commissioner Administrator updates.
Commissioner updates.
I'm sorry, I don't see that in my agenda.
It was a typo. It is on the agenda. It's been on every agenda. It was a typo and was added for everybody in the room, but being that you're not here, you didn't see it. But yes, it's on the agenda.
Okay, so since last meeting I was there, I attended the County Leaders Conference in Renton, Washington for 3.5 days. They were 10 to 12-hour days and end-to-end briefings, a lot of the latest information on what's happening with counties and budgets. A lot of the challenges that we're facing are no different than other counties. There are some important changes to the OPMA, the Open Public Meetings Act, that affect all the counties, us included. The 4 items for the 39 counties of Washington, our legislative agenda, and the items will be taken to the state legislature, were approved unanimously by the Legislative Steering Committee of the State Association of Counties, and then it was approved by the full board of the Wasatch State Association of Counties Board of Directors. And that activity is going to start January 5th, and then there will be at least 2 to 3 meetings per month in Olympia, actually lobbying the legislature on behalf of the counties. There are some action items in there for litigation to try and require the state to fund more of the county activities that they're currently not funding, their unfunded mandates. And there's enough for a whole lot more discussion here, but I'll just leave it there and say that if anybody wants to, they can look at the agenda from the meeting online. If they see any topical areas that they want information, feel free to contact me, and I'll brief down what took place. Thanks.
Commissioner Mullen.
So last week had the Pasco Chamber Board of Directors meeting, discussion on rates and dues for the members. Also had the Ben Franklin Health Department Board of Health meeting. We had not new people, but people that have taken on new positions to come forward and give updates on their new job placements. That's it.
Thank you. Last week I attended the budget meeting here in the courthouse, the Ben Franklin Health District meeting. Housing Authority tried to phone in, and I would like to reach out to them if we could, Ms. Milham, if they could make that available to be able to attend the meeting by phone. I'd really appreciate it, because sometimes you're in different areas, and right now it's only in attendance in person. And then attended the department heads and electeds first meeting that we've had here in the courthouse, and I thought it was well received, a lot of good discussion, and I think that we're going to rotate the commissioners through this. So the next meeting, I think, will be in 2 weeks, and I encourage my other commissioners to sit in and hear the concerns from the department heads and the electeds, because it was an excellent meeting. Mr. Davidson.
One commissioner at a time.
One at a time, so we don't abuse the Open Meeting Act. So with that, we'll move down to the administrator office business, which is the comp study.
Oh, okay.
The grade study.
Thank you, commissioners, managers, and staff. So back in 2018, we had our last classification and compensation study. And HR generally recommends that you do these every 5 years if you can afford them. So I prepared a request for a proposal and distributed it last week asking for comments. Aside from a couple of typos, I also added a timeline in the current version of it, which I have passed out to all the commissioners. Subject to your concurrence today, I'm going to run ads next week in several papers, the Graphic and the Tri-City Herald. I checked into a couple of county postings and was informed that they don't even have a place to post an RFP, which really surprised me. So if you know differently, let me know. Once the study is launched, the consultant is going to want to meet with commissioners several times, and they're likely going to be asking all managers and staff to meet as well. They're going to fill out what's called a PDQ, Position Description Questionnaire document. And so an employee, for example, will fill it out. They'll send it to their manager. The manager will say, yes, that employee actually does that. The manager will fill one out, and then all those will be collected, and that will launch the project. Okay, so we can expect that. I would ask basically that managers cooperate in that process. It can be a little bit onerous at the onset. So basically, there are going to be periodic meetings with staff and commissioners and department heads. And basically, I expect it will last approximately 6 months. You can check that timeline out for that. We are going to put Mr. Killian's positions first. I know that he has a sense of urgency, so I've put that in the RFP to move that ahead of on the schedule. And basically, we're doing this because positions have been created since 2018. They've been eliminated. There have been all sorts of changes. Compensation updates need to occur. So that's what's going to happen, and it's going to happen very shortly. I have a list of probably 5 or 6 recipients that I'm going to send out to initially, unless I hear from others. So subject to your questions?
Completion time?
I have June.
June?
Yeah, June. I figure 6 months is really adequate. If you look at page 6, you'll see.
That would be the completion of all departments. When do you think that the,
That would be the final presentation to you
okay,
in June, end of June.
all right. Mr.
I
Davis?
do have one comment. I didn't get a chance this morning to confer with Sam about it. In regards to moving up the clerk's employees earlier than others, I was kind of in the anticipation that if they weren't going to get a raise, and that might be something to appease. And I didn't. We talked about it before.
Okay.
I haven't had really chance to talk to you about it now. It is problematic somewhat to ask for some deliverables to be earlier than others. It kind of makes the whole study kind of clunky and kind of difficult. And so I think that based upon what just happened, that they got a raise, I would advocate that we don't do that and that we make the study all one. I mean, that was something that we kind of talked about that might have been a compromise had they not got a raise. But at this point in time, I don't think, because I think it compromises the study by moving deliverables ahead of other milepoints. I think it's best that we don't do that. So I'm sorry, Sam, we hadn't had a chance to talk about that issue.
No problem.
That based on the fact that if the board, which way they went, that we might want to refrain from talking about that in the future.
Okay,
I'm good with that.
Good.
that's all I have.
All righty. Is that it then? Well, thank you very much and doing a great job.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Enjoying it.
All right. Thank you.
So with that, we move down to public comment. Is there anybody on the phone?
Yes, we do have a caller on the phone.
Okay.
Leo Perellis. Hello, sir? You want to open it up to public, and I'll
Yep.
text her and ask her if...
Yep. We'll open it up to anybody that wants to come forward in the audience.
It would be a disservice to my staff if I didn't at least come to you and speak to you about what just happened with the positions being increased in the clerk's office. I'm very emotional right now. So I too will then be coming to you. Prosecutor Santa and I went and met with the new HR director with our same exact concerns that Killian has in the clerk's office. So we are, just because we're in the prosecutor's office, they're in the clerk's office, it's no different. So we came to the budget hearings with our requests. All of them were denied. Same with Killian. He came with his requests, and all of them are denied because there was a compensation study that was going to be moving forward. And now he came again, and his positions were approved outside of the budget hearings, outside of the compensation study. And so I'm assuming that you will feel the same with our staff if we bring those same concerns and questions to you. We carry over money every year. We do our best to not spend down our budget to zero. And we have over $75,000 that we were going to be moving over to you guys for the 23 budget. But apparently I understand from this meeting that I can come to you then with the same concerns with my staff. I mean, every year, minimum wage is increasing. Every year, everything costs more money. We have been fighting for our employees, and we have watched every other county department get increases except for us. I might be missing a department, but I know I know for a fact we have had no increases, and we have gone to the HR director with our same concerns. Somehow we just slipped out of being addressed with the clerk's office because we have those same exact concerns. So we'll come to you with the same requests, and I'm assuming then we'll get the same answers, because that would only be fair. They're the same positions, same concerns. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have him on the phone?
Mr. Chairman, this is Sean Fan on the phone.
Yeah, Sean, go ahead.
I just also wanted to address the board. One of the proposals that I made at
Sean, hang on a second. Yours coming through so loud, you're distorted. Try it again.
All right, how is it now?
Still too loud.
Is that any better?
Okay, try now.
Try it now.
All right, Commissioners, how is this?
Go ahead.
Is that any better?
Yeah, go ahead, Sean.
All right, thank you. One of the things I just wanted to add, I appreciate everybody advocating for their employees, and one of the proposals that I had made at our last our budget presentation was to address some of the issues of inequities between varying departments. And one of the solutions I proposed to the commissioners would be to advocate or approve, and now with the advancement of the clerk's office positions, as Kelly said, we are in a similar position, just like I think every other department, struggling to retain our quality employees, struggling to compensate them in advance of this compensation study. I would ask, would the commissioners approve then today that effective with today's date, now that we've advanced almost every other department within the county, that upon completion of the compensation study, whenever that's done, if that's done 6 months from now, I would ask that today's date of November 22, that would be the date that those advancements or the compensation study would be in place. So in other words, we're not doing retroactive payments, but what we're doing is a proactive look on what is in the best interest of our employees and of the county, and trying to establish equity among all departments. I would simply ask that the board approve, effective today's date, with the movement of the clerk's office positions, that upon completion of the compensation study, it will then revert back to November 22 of 2022 to make sure that we impose those same equities across the board with all departments. So in other words, if the compensation study determined that a 10% increase in compensation is warranted among prosecutor's office employees and staff, the clerk's office, the auditor's office, I would ask that the board make that adjustment today so that effective today's date, my employees receive the same benefit as any other departments that have already been granted movement within their budget. Otherwise, it begs a question on why do we do a budget hearing during the budget cycle if we can come in at different times of the year and simply make a proposition to the board off-cycle without the benefit of being able to evaluate the entirety of the county's budgetary position at one margin. And I'm not faulting the board or anything like that. I'm just trying to propose an equitable opportunity for all employees, that we will have the same opportunity to have this look back to November 22, today's date, if it's in fact shown that our compensation study merits an increase amongst our county employees. Everybody should be going back to today's date so that we move forward and nobody misses out because they happen to be in a different department doing similar functions of work. That would be the most fair and equitable way to address that. And I would ask the commissioners to adopt that by resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else for public comment?
Yes, we do have one call on hold.
He was online.
Oh. Sorry, we've had trouble connecting this one.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Stephen Bauman, and I'm not an unfamiliar face to you at this podium. I wanted to ask you again something that I've asked you on numerous occasions before, and that is that you do your job as the elected representative of your community. Sheriff Raymond brought this paper to you, and I read through it multiple times as I was sitting here. I was aware that this deal had happened, but I had not seen this article, so I wanted to give you some highlights. The Future Benton County Behavioral Health and Recovery Center. Where's Franklin County? Are we not represented in this? As we move forward through this, it says a 0.1% sales tax increase. Both Benton and Franklin County will fund this center's operations. So it's a foregone conclusion that we are paying for this, something that we don't know about, or at least we haven't been briefed on and made decisions of. It says that the other day that mayors, plural, city staff, and county officials celebrated the KGH acquisition with a 5-minute news conference Thursday morning to give a bird's eye view of the project. Like Sheriff Raymond, I would like to know who from Franklin County was represented in that meeting. You go on over here, and apparently the plan is relatively advanced. It says Benton County is currently soliciting proposal request for the recovery center with a deadline of December 9th. As a consultant myself, it does not happen in a relatively short amount of time when you put together a proposal. And when you're putting together a proposal to operate a facility of this magnitude, this request for proposal or request for qualification has to have been out for quite some time in order to get to the point where they said that they are going to have a deadline for receiving these proposals of December the 9th. And I would like to know if any of my elected representatives were a part of that RFP or RFQ. It also says Benton County plans to open its recovery center in early 2025. And so this begs the question, is Franklin County even represented with this, or are we just paying the taxes and we don't get to make any of the decisions? Another piece here towards the end, it says the county has negotiated permission to use some of the space for the Benton Franklin Health District. So the way that it's describing this in numerous places through here, it's Benton County making these decisions. So they're already figuring out who's going to be there, how it's going to operate, and what the rules are going to be. And it appears this is happening in a vacuum without the input of my elected representatives. And that's what I would like to say. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Is there anybody else for public comment? Nobody on the phone?
We do have one caller, but we'll
Okay.
take it right there.
Speaking of kicking the can down the road, I'd like to ask a question of the commissioners. How long have we talked about doing a wage study and a pay grade study and all of those issues that we've spent over an hour talking about? I'm pretty sure that this board, maybe not these individuals, said do a study quite some time ago, and it never occurred. It's time for it to occur in a timely manner with proper job descriptions, with some little bit of in-depth thought in the process, and then to start with a new pay grade in 21st century standards and steps, so we don't keep revisiting this over and over.
Okay.
Take the caller. No caller on the phone?
Here, let's.
Hello?
Go ahead, you have 3 minutes.
Okay. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, appreciate it. Hello, commissioners. My name is Leo Perales. I just wanted to reintroduce myself. Just recently, I was appointed to the HAPO Track Advisory Board, and I just wanted to get in touch with you guys in a more public setting and see when the first meeting's going to be. I heard some stuff today about the track. There's a lot of things going on there, and I've been keeping track of that. And so I just want to see when the first meeting's going to be and see if we can maybe have a meeting with some of the new board members, and so we can start turning around the track. That's that. And also I wanted to see if you guys had any information on the appointments to that Benton Franklin Health Board in regards to the community members. I did apply, and I just have not heard back. Sent in my application a couple of weeks ago. So I just wanted to know if they were going through the process of looking at those applications and seeing when the first meeting for that newly created advisory board was going to be. So other than that, appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else for public comment? Seeing none, I think we have 2 executive sessions. Mr. Davidson, you want us to lead us into those?
Yes, we may be able to, I'll confer with Jen, our prosecutor, when she comes up. I think that they both can be done under the same RCW, and so we might be able to consolidate this all into one. But if we don't, we'll come out and we'll announce the next executive session. But I'm sorry?
I believe they'd be the same, so we can just combine.
Okay, so pursuant to RCW 4230-110, subsection 1, section 1, subsection G, evaluate qualifications of an applicant for employment or review performance of a public employee. I would say we probably need about 20 minutes.
For both, or for
per all
each?
3.
For all 3, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. We are back in regular session, and we're going to extend the executive session for 5 more minutes under the same RCW. Okay, we've come out of executive session and we're back to regular session. Is there any other business for the good of the county? Hearing none.